When someone forgets you, it stings. It feels like the time you gave, the love you poured, the energy you invested, all of it vanished as if it never mattered. And the natural response is to sit in that pain, to replay every detail, to wonder how he could erase you so easily when you still remember everything so vividly. But here's the truth. The fact that he forgot you doesn't mean you were forgettable. It means he never knew how to hold on to something valuable. And if he can't forget you, then you owe it to yourself to forget him without regret. Not by erasing your heart, but by reclaiming your power, rewriting your story, and moving forward so fiercely that his memory becomes irrelevant. This isn't about pretending you didn't care. It's about refusing to let his carelessness define your future. When someone forgets you, your first instinct is to turn inward and blame yourself. You start scanning your memory for clues, asking questions that haunt you at night. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? Was I too much, or maybe not enough of something else? That spiral can trap you because it convinces you that his ability to forget is a reflection of your value. But the truth is, it's not about you at all. It's about him, his capacity, his priorities, his blind spots. And the moment you internalize that, you free yourself from the endless cycle of self-doubt. When a man forgets you, it doesn't mean you weren't memorable. It doesn't mean the love you gave was meaningless. What it means is that he wasn't ready or willing to appreciate the depth of what was right in front of him. Think about it. People forget things that don't matter to them, yes, but they also forget things they aren't capable of holding on to. If someone hands you a diamond, but you don't know its worth, you might toss it aside thinking it's just another stone. That doesn't make the diamond worthless. It just reveals the blindness of the person holding it. That's what happened here. So many women get stuck in the illusion that if he forgot them, it's because they weren't enough to be remembered. But it's not about being unforgettable. It's about who has the emotional maturity and presence to value you. Some people aren't wired to cherish consistency, kindness, or depth. They chase novelty, ego strokes, or shallow validation. If that's the kind of man he is, then of course he forgot you, because what you offered wasn't what he was capable of appreciating. That's not your failure, that's his limitation. When you stop asking why, and start seeing his forgetting as a mirror of his own inadequacy, you feel lighter. You realize that his silence or absence isn't a wound to your identity, it's simply proof of where he's at in his life. And if his capacity for connection is shallow, why would you want to tether your worth to someone like that anyway? Why would you let a person who can't even hold on to something valuable define how you see yourself? This is why the first step in forgetting him without regret is refusing to take his actions personally. He forgot you not because you didn't leave an impact, but because he doesn't have the strength to carry it. You might remember every detail, every word, every moment because that's who you are. You love deeply, you invest fully, you hold space for people. That's not a weakness, that's your strength. The mistake would be to waste that strength on someone incapable of matching it. Think of it like a gift. You gave him something priceless, your time, your love, your attention. If he tossed it aside or forgot it, that doesn't make the gift worthless. It just means you gave it to the wrong person, and the lesson isn't to stop giving, it's to become more discerning about who deserves it. His forgetting is your wake-up call. Stop asking, why wasn't I enough for him? And start asking, why was he enough for me? At the end of the day, you are not defined by who remembers you. You are defined by who you are when you give, when you love, when you show up. He forgot you, but that doesn't erase your kindness, your beauty, your presence. Those things remain. The only thing gone is the illusion that he was the right one to receive them. And in that realization lies your freedom. Because once you accept that his forgetting says more about him than it does about you, you can finally let go without regret. One of the most painful traps after someone forgets you is the feeling of powerlessness. You sit there replaying the past, thinking he got the final say in your story because he chose to let go while you're still holding on. But the truth is, forgetting him isn't something you wait for, it's something you choose. It's not a passive process where time does all the work. It's an active decision to take your power back. And the moment you realize you have that choice, you stop being the one left behind and become the one who moves forward. We're conditioned to believe that closure comes from the other person, that he has to explain himself, apologize, or suddenly wake up and realize what he lost before we can finally feel free. But when you put your healing in his hands, you hand over control of your happiness to the very person who already neglected it. Waiting for him to make you whole is like waiting for the person who broke the glass to fix the pieces. It keeps you stuck in dependency. The choice to forget him isn't about him at all. It's about you deciding to no longer invest your energy into someone who didn't value it in the first place. Choice is powerful because it turns the tables. Right now, you may feel like he had the power to hurt you, to walk away, to forget. But you have the power to respond. You get to choose how much of your life he continues to occupy. You get to choose whether you let his absence define your days or whether you fill them with something greater. That's what reclaiming the power of choice means. It's drawing a line and saying, I don't wait for him to forget me. I decide to forget him. This choice doesn't always feel easy. Sometimes you'll wake up and feel the urge to check if he's reached out. Sometimes you'll miss him so much that it feels unbearable. But in those moments, the choice is still there. You can choose not to text him, not to stalk his social media, not to replay conversations that only leave you empty. And every time you make that choice, you reinforce to yourself that you're no longer giving him the control. Forgetting isn't one dramatic decision made once. It's 1,000 small choices made daily until the habit of holding on is replaced by the habit of letting go. Reclaiming choice also means reframing the narrative. Instead of telling yourself, he forgot me, start saying, I chose to forget him. Do you see the difference? The first statement places you as the victim of his neglect, while the second places you as the author of your healing. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let the hurt control your future. He doesn't get to define the story. You do. The beauty of claiming this choice is that it's liberating. It shifts the focus from what you lost to what you're gaining, your peace, your confidence, your independence. When you realize that you can choose where to put your energy, you stop pouring it into dead ends. You begin to invest in yourself, in your passions, in relationships that actually reciprocate. That's when forgetting him without regret becomes possible, because your life begins to feel so full that you wonder why you ever gave him so much power in the first place. At the end of the day, forgetting him isn't about waiting for time to dull the pain. It's about deciding every single day that your happiness is too important to be tied to someone who let it slip away. You don't need his permission to move on. You don't need his acknowledgement to heal. You don't need his memory to validate your existence. You have the choice, and the moment you use it, you stop being the one who was forgotten and become the one who chose freedom. That's where your real strength begins. When someone forgets you, the danger isn't just in the pain of their absence. It's in the story you start telling yourself about what that absence means. Your mind begins to spin a narrative. If he forgot me, maybe I wasn't important. If he moved on so quickly, maybe I was replaceable. If he didn't fight for me, maybe I wasn't worth fighting for. And once those thoughts take root, they become the lens through which you see yourself. That's why rewriting the story is so crucial, because the story you choose to believe will either keep you chained to regret or set you free to move forward without it. The mistake so many people make is letting his silence become the author of their worth. His forgetting you doesn't mean you didn't matter. It doesn't mean you didn't leave an impact. It simply means he wasn't capable of holding onto what you gave. Imagine a person who throws away a priceless painting because they don't recognize its value. Does that make the art worthless? No, it just exposes their blindness. In the same way, your worth doesn't decrease because he failed to appreciate it. The story you must rewrite is the one where his inability to see your value has nothing to do with your actual value. Rewriting the story also means reframing the role you played in his life. Instead of telling yourself, "I was just someone he forgot," you start saying, "I was someone who showed up, who loved, who gave," and that is strength, not weakness. Too often, we shame ourselves for caring, as if the act of giving love to the wrong person somehow makes us foolish. But the truth is, your capacity to love is a gift. The real mistake isn't in loving, it's in continuing to give that love to someone who showed they didn't deserve it. And when you rewrite the story, you see that the lesson wasn't about being too much or not enough. It was about learning to direct your heart toward people who can truly hold it. The story you tell also decides how you remember the relationship. If you only focus on the good moments and idealize them, you'll keep him on a pedestal he doesn't deserve. If you only focus on the pain, you risk defining yourself as broken. But when you take the balanced view, acknowledging the good while also facing the truth of how he failed, you begin to see the full picture. That picture allows you to say, yes, there were moments of joy, but there was also neglect and forgetting and carelessness. And I deserve more than that. That's a story that empowers you instead of chaining you. Rewriting the story is also about claiming the ending. Maybe he forgot you. Maybe he walked away. Maybe he moved on. But you get to decide how the chapter closes. Does it close with you abandoned, or does it close with you rising? The answer depends on what you choose to focus on. When you choose to see this as a turning point, a moment where you learned your worth and demanded better, the story becomes one of empowerment. You stop being the character he left behind and become the author who used the pain as fuel for growth. And here's the beautiful part. Once you rewrite the story, forgetting him becomes easier. Because suddenly he's no longer the hero of your narrative. He's just a lesson, a side character, a stepping stone to something better. You stop replaying his absence as proof of your lack and start replaying it as proof of his limitations. And when you live in that truth, the regret fades because you realize you didn't lose something irreplaceable. You simply cleared space for something greater. At the end of the day, you can't control whether he forgot you, but you can control the story you attach to it. And if you choose to write the story in your favor, you'll see his forgetting not as the end of your value, but as the beginning of your freedom. That's when regret loses its grip, and you finally move forward with your head high, knowing that his chapter in your life may be over, but the story that really matters is just beginning. Regret is one of the heaviest emotions to carry after someone forgets you. You look back at all the time, love, and energy you gave and feel like you wasted it. You replay the late night conversations, the sacrifices you made, the ways you prioritized him, and think, if only I had seen it sooner. If only I hadn't cared so much. If only I had walked away before he forgot me. That regret eats at you because it convinces you that your love was a mistake. But regret keeps you tied to the past, while gratitude sets you free. The way to forget him without carrying bitterness is to transform that regret into gratitude for the lessons, for the clarity, and for the person you're becoming because of it. Think about it this way. If he hadn't shown you how careless someone can be with your heart, would you know how deeply you deserve to be valued? If he hadn't forgotten you, would you have realized how important it is to never forget yourself? Every disappointment you faced with him gave you information. It highlighted what you can't ignore next time. It sharpened your standards. It gave you proof that settling will only cost you more in the long run. That doesn't mean you should thank him for hurting you, but you can thank yourself for surviving it and for allowing the pain to wake you up to what you truly deserve. Regret is rooted in the illusion that you could have done something differently to change the outcome. Gratitude reminds you that the outcome was always going to be what it was because of who he is, not because of what you did. You couldn't have loved him better into remembering you. You couldn't have sacrificed more to make him value you. His forgetting wasn't about your effort, it was about his inability to receive it. Once you see that, regret begins to dissolve because you stop blaming yourself for someone else's shortcomings. Gratitude grows in that space when you realize, I showed up with a full heart. That says everything about me and nothing about him. Turning regret into gratitude also means honoring the good that came out of the relationship, even if it ended badly. Maybe you learned how deeply you can love. Maybe you discovered parts of yourself you didn't know existed. Maybe you grew stronger through the heartbreak. Pain leaves scars, yes, but scars are reminders of healing, not of loss. Gratitude lets you look at the scar and say, that's proof I endured. That's proof I can rise again. When you practice gratitude, forgetting him stops being about erasing memories and starts being about reclaiming perspective. You don't have to deny that you cared. You don't have to hate yourself for giving. You simply shift the narrative. Instead of saying, I wasted time on him, you say, I invested time that taught me what I will never settle for again. That change in language transforms regret into empowerment. The truth is, regret holds you hostage in the past. It keeps you replaying what you can't change. Gratitude moves you forward. It allows you to take what happened, extract the lesson, and then release the rest. It doesn't mean you minimize the pain. It means you refuse to let the pain define you. And when you live in gratitude, you stop carrying him with you into the future. You see the experience as a teacher, not as a permanent mark on your worth. In the end, regret says, I lost. Gratitude says, I learned, and learning means you win twice. Once because you survived him, and again because you'll never waste yourself on someone like him again. That's how you forget him without bitterness, without longing, without regret. You close the chapter not with resentment, but with gratitude for the clarity it gave you. And that gratitude becomes the foundation of a stronger, wiser, freer version of you, one who no longer even remembers what it felt like to be forgotten by someone so unworthy. The fastest way to forget someone isn't to sit around forcing yourself not to think of them. It's to build a life that makes them irrelevant. Obsession fades when your present becomes bigger than your past. When you're busy creating something meaningful, there's no room left for a man who couldn't even value your presence. The mistake most people make is believing that forgetting him is about suppressing thoughts, fighting memories, or pushing away feelings. But the truth is, forgetting happens naturally when you fill your world with so much richness that he simply gets lost in it. Think about the moments when you miss him the most. They're usually the moments when your life feels quiet, when there's nothing pulling your attention forward, when you have the space to dwell on the past. That's why building a life that excites you is so important. When you wake up with goals that inspire you, routines that ground you, friendships that nurture you, and passions that energize you, your mind no longer clings to what it lost. It's too busy being fed by what it's gaining. It doesn't have to be dramatic or overnight. Building a life that makes him irrelevant is about small, consistent steps. Picking up a new hobby you always wanted to try. Spending time with people who make you laugh until your stomach hurts. Saying yes to opportunities that challenge you, even if they scare you. filling your environment with things that remind you of your strength instead of your loss. These little shifts add up, and before long, the space he used to occupy feels full of things that actually deserve to be there. The beauty of this approach is that it flips the focus. Instead of thinking, "How do I stop missing him?" you start thinking, "How can I build a life that feels so good I don't want to look back?" That's when the transformation begins. Because the truth is, your mind can't fixate on absence when it's surrounded by abundance. He becomes irrelevant, not because you forced yourself to erase him, but because your life grew too vibrant for him to matter anymore. And here's something most people don't realize: relevance is a choice. Every time you check his social media, you make him relevant. Every time you replay the old conversations, you make him relevant. Every time you measure your worth through the lens of his forgetting, you make him relevant. Building a new life isn't just about adding things, it's about subtracting him from the center of your story. It's saying, "I refuse to keep feeding the ghost of a man who couldn't even hold on to me when he had the chance." As you grow into this new life, something powerful happens. Indifference takes root. You no longer wonder what he's doing or who he's with, because those questions stop being interesting. They're distractions from a reality you've outgrown, and the best part, you don't even notice the moment it shifts. One day you realize you didn't think about him all week, not because you forced yourself not to, but because you were too busy living. That's real forgetting, not suppression, but replacement. This is how you make forgetting him effortless. You don't wrestle with the past. You build such a beautiful present that the past can't compete. He fades not because you hate him, not because you punish yourself into silence, but because your world is too full of joy, love, and purpose to accommodate his memory. That's when he truly becomes irrelevant, not by force but by choice, not by denial but by growth. And that's when you finally realize the life you've built without him is the only proof you ever needed that you didn't lose anything. You only gained yourself. Fixation is what keeps you trapped in the loop of his memory. It's the late night scrolling through his social media, the constant wondering if he thinks about you, the endless replaying of conversations that are long dead. Fixation gives him a place in your mind that he doesn't deserve. And the longer you hold on to that fixation, the heavier it becomes, until it feels like you're dragging his ghost through every step of your life. But the opposite of fixation isn't indifference that magically appears overnight, it's freedom. Freedom means choosing to stop carrying him into your present, choosing to step out of the mental prison where every thought circles back to him, and instead giving yourself permission to move forward. Freedom begins when you stop mistaking fixation for closure. So many people cling to the idea that they can't move on until they get answers, apologies, or acknowledgement. But closure isn't something someone else gives you, it's something you decide. Fixation keeps you in the waiting room of his approval, but freedom comes the moment you realize you don't need his explanation to let go. You don't need him to validate your pain for it to be real. You don't need him to remember you to prove you mattered. You validate yourself, and that's enough. The reason fixation feels so powerful is because it disguises itself as control. You think that by replaying the memories, by holding onto the story, you're keeping some connection alive. But in truth, fixation is the very thing that keeps you powerless. It ties your identity to someone who has already moved on, and it keeps you looking backward instead of forward. Freedom, on the other hand, restores your power. It says, "I'm not going to keep staring at the closed door. I'm going to walk into the open one right in front of me." And freedom isn't just about forgetting him, it's about reclaiming yourself. When you release fixation, you free up mental and emotional energy that can now be invested in your own life. That energy can go into your dreams, your friendships, your growth. You suddenly have space for joy, creativity, and love that isn't tainted by old pain. That's the irony. Fixation convinces you that forgetting him means losing something important, but in reality, forgetting him frees you to gain everything you've been missing. There's also a deeper truth here. Freedom is an act of self-respect. Fixation means you're still letting him occupy real estate in your mind without paying rent. Freedom means you decide he doesn't get that privilege anymore. He didn't respect your love enough to hold on to it, so why should you keep respecting his memory enough to obsess over it? Choosing freedom is choosing to honor yourself over someone who couldn't. It's saying, I deserve peace more than I deserve answers. And here's what makes freedom so beautiful. It's not about forgetting who you are or pretending the relationship didn't happen. It's about choosing to integrate it into your past without letting it dominate your present. You acknowledge it, you learn from it, and then you set it down. You stop clutching it like a lifeline and start walking like someone who knows their future is brighter than their history. Ultimately, the difference between fixation and freedom is the difference between survival and thriving. Fixation keeps you surviving, breathing, existing, but never really moving. Freedom launches you forward. It opens doors you didn't even know were there because your eyes were too locked on him to see them. And the moment you choose freedom over fixation, you stop asking, how do I forget him? And start asking, what amazing things do I get to discover now that he's no longer in my way? That shift is everything. That shift is the real forgetting, the kind that doesn't just erase him, but erases the need for him altogether. When someone forgets you, it can feel like the cruelest wound, that everything you gave, everything you shared, everything you were to them how disappeared into nothing. But the truth is, the forgetting was never about you. It was about their limits, their blindness, their inability to see what was right in front of them. And once you realize that, you're free, free to stop asking why, free to stop waiting, free to stop torturing yourself with what you could have done differently. You don't need to hold on to regret. You don't need to keep replaying the past. You don't need to live another day giving space in your heart to someone who didn't know how to treasure it. Forgetting him without regret isn't about pretending you never care. It's about honoring yourself enough to let the past stay in the past. It's about reclaiming your choice, rewriting your story, and filling your life so completely that he becomes a footnote instead of a headline. Because here's the truth, he forgot you, but you will never forget yourself again. And that's the power. That's the victory. When you choose freedom over fixation, when you build a life so rich that his memory has no place in it, you stop being the woman who was forgotten and become the woman who moves forward without regret. And that woman doesn't just forget him, she becomes unforgettable.